So I played the original Japanese version. I played the NES Dragon Warrior. There are differences.
Really?
Then I played the, again in Japanese, Super Famicom remake, which never came to the US. Then I played the Game Boy Color version as well, which is based on the Super Famicom version, but there are a few differences there as well. Then you have the mobile version, which is terrible, and then this HD 2D remake. For these couple of days, these last few days I've been playing, I have absolutely fallen in love with Dragon Quest 1, specifically Dragon Quest 1. And I think they've done just a fantastic job with this game in particular. I've really enjoyed my time with Dragon Quest HD 2D. Welcome, everyone, to this very special edition.
Very special.
Of the State of the Arc podcast, because we're talking about Dragon Quest. That's not something we've done a lot in the past.
I think I reviewed Dragon Quest 11.
Yeah, and I think you did a review for that movie.
Your Story.
That got taken down on YouTube.
It is no longer available, and it can't ever be available because YouTube won't allow it. Yeah.
YouTube is dumb when it comes to its own free use, sort of like, or fair use applicability in terms of like short clips of movies that are like under 10 seconds long, but like they still get flagged and it's freaking stupid.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've not talked about it a lot, but I am really excited to talk about it today. For these couple of days, these last few days I've been playing, I have absolutely fallen in love with Dragon Quest 1, specifically Dragon Quest 1. I know that they released the HD 2D version of DQ3 last year.
3's out, yeah.
And now we've got 1 and 2 together in this package. I'm going to be talking almost exclusively about Dragon Quest 1. Okay. I have dabbled with the other two, and I have played the other two, intermittently. I understand, like, the chronology here of the Erdrick trilogy, right? You have Dragon Quest 3 is a prequel to Dragon Quest 1 and 2.
Okay.
So it comes first. The hero, Erdrick, that they refer to in DQ1 is the main hero of Dragon Quest 3.
Ah, very cool, very cool.
So that's all I'll say to avoid like the spoilers of how that all works. But Dragon Quest 1, the hero is a descendant of that hero, and then the descendants, again, many centuries in the future of DQ1 is DQ2. Anyway, I, in preparing to talk about this new remade version, have gone back and played every version of the game. I have played the original Japanese version in Japanese. That's how simple the game is. You can kind of just memorize, like, I know that torches cost 8, so I see the number 8 in the store, and I know that's a torch. And I know the copper sword's 180, and I know the full plate armor 3,000, and I know the magic armor 7,700. So, funny. Like, I'm able to sort of, like, get around, and I can memorize the spell order, so I know when I'm casting heal, or when I want to, like, warp back to Tantagel or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a simple enough game to where I can do that. I can play in Japanese. So I played the original Japanese version. I played the NES Dragon Warrior. There are differences.
Really?
Then I played the, again in Japanese, Super Famicom remake, which never came to the US. It was Japanese only. Then I played the Game Boy Color version as well, which is based on the Super Famicom version, but there are a few differences there as well. Then you have the mobile version, which is terrible, and then this HD 2D remake. Okay, so here's the TLDR of all of that. There are things I like about every version. If you were to play like the OG Dragon Quest and then compare it to what they've done here in the HD 2D remake, you'd be like, whoa, there's a lot of changes to this. But when you consider the iterative sort of lineage here between Famicom to Super Famicom to Game Boy Color to now HD 2D remake, there's a lot of things I liked in some of the interim titles that are, retained here. And I think they've done just a fantastic job with this game in particular. I've really enjoyed my time with Dragon Quest HD 2D. I think it's really, really good in sort of walking that line between we're trying to bring a game from 1986 with all of the, what many would consider, I do not, many would consider annoying or tedious aspects of RPGs from that era, and tried to like thread this needle between like, where do we adjust those and bring those up to like what modern audiences expect in their RPGs, and where do we not? Where do we like say, no, this is fundamental to what that game was, right?
And we're going to stay the same.
That's a very hard thing to do when remaking a game.
Basically no game franchise does
has ever done it perfectly.
Yeah.
This game does not do it perfectly either, but I am really happy with the final result. That said, I will get into some of the things that I think might step on the toes a little bit there.
Okay.
But I've been speaking a lot. What has been your impression of the game?
Yeah, I just didn't really know what I was getting into. I've played Dragon Quest XI, and that is the only one that I've ever played. I have not played any of the others. I think I saw pieces of the earlier Dragon Quest games briefly, either you or my brother playing them, but I had never played them before. So this was my first time playing like an old, and I just love games made in this time period.
Me too, dude.
They're so cool. And I know that this isn't the exact version of the game. I have questions about like the script. Like here's a question. Is the original NES Dragon Warrior, did it use like this early modern
100%.
English? Okay, sweet.
Yes.
That's cool. I like
100%.
Okay, so the script, they didn't take too many liberties there.
The only version of the game in English that did not was the Game Boy Color.
Oh, really?
And that was more due to the fact that they had pretty severe text limitations on that version of the game.
Oh,
so even
okay.
characters
they couldn't be
like
verbose and poetic.
yeah, even characters like Erdrick, the main like mythic hero of the mythos here, was called Loto, because that's his Japanese name. He's called
shorter.
Loto in Japanese. It's shorter, so they just made it Loto in English. But then they go back to Erdrick, for this version and for the mobile version and stuff like that. In every English version outside of Game Boy Color, they speak this way. And there is a very specific reason for that.
Oh, really?
And it's actually really important to how this game connects to Dragon Quest III. It's even true in Japanese that while they don't have a specific or a really close analog to, for us, Elizabethan or maybe like King James era, early modern English, they don't really have something like that Japanese people would understand really anyways. In English, we do a lot of studying of literature from that time and Shakespeare and other things. So it's been retained a little better and can be understood a little better. They don't have that, but they still have maybe what you've mentioned in the past, something maybe more like World War II level.
Yeah, well, it would be kind of the way the Emperor talked then, but I would say they would probably go towards like a Meiji, like, like the end of the samurai, the end of the Ronin period.
Sure.
And around then, there's a type of Japanese that is different. Degozaru instead of des and stuff like that. Like they do different things there. But it's not that far. Like that's like 150 years ago. When we're talking early modern English, we're talking 400 years ago. You know?
Right.
So it's they have to go to a more modern form because Japanese has changed a lot.
Yeah.
And some of that has to do with like printed literature and that stuff like that.
Sure.
Maybe it took a little longer for Japan to start, doing that en masse. But once they did, then, things kind of solidified pretty well with the language. So they can't go quite as far back as easily as we can. But it still feels pretty archaic for the Japanese to listen to that, Japanese from even 100 years ago. It sounds to them quite historic.
Yeah. So it's important to point out that they do this in Japanese too. Yeah. It's not just a English localization choice. Because it's a fantasy RPG and medieval setting, and so we're going to have them talk with these and thous.
Yeah.
There is a story reason for why they do that.
So does Erdrick just speak straight up Old English?
No, Erdrick speaks modern English.
Well, this
and
is
so
very
you might have noticed that. I don't know how closely you're watching it necessarily, but when you read the tombstone at Erdrick's Hollow, it's written in normal sort of like modern English parlance in comparison to all the people speaking with these and thous all around the world of Alefgard, which is the world of Dragon Quest I. Anyway, so there's a reason for it. But yes, they do. In the original NES Dragon Warrior, they do speak that way.
I love that. I like that a lot. So that's a big draw for me. Also, the game is just a ton of fun. I mean, I just feel thrown into this world. The way that the Japanese do European medieval style is endlessly fascinating to me because it's not exactly what most of us think of in terms of medieval European stuff, but it is close. But it has this weird additional flavor that is foreign and interesting in its own right, and that's because it's the Japanese perspective. So I love the world building. I love the way everything seems to work. I love the pixel art. I love the 3D, 2D. Everything about this I really love. But they didn't modernize it so much to where it doesn't feel like an old game. It still feels like those old games I used to play on the NES and Super NES. And so I just appreciate that a lot. And I love playing any game that throws me back into that time period.
Yeah.
And this reminds me of, along the lines of playing like Final Fantasy 1 for the first time and going back to all of these old NES games and playing them again. I'm just like blown away by how quickly games got good and how awesome they were so early on, like 40 years ago.
Yeah. I think that there's a sentiment, and that I understand, that previous to like the PlayStation era, the storytelling of these sort of big large scale RPGs was pretty limited. Like there's definitely truth to that. And
like there's character limits, but like talent was not limited.
Like
these were talented storytellers.
We've gone on and on at length about character limitations. And when by character we mean like the number of letters you can put in the game. Like these are how small these files had to be to where like text was
bytes.
An issue.
Measuring in bytes, not whatever we do now, terabytes or gigabytes.
So, especially when you're translating from Japanese, you can say a lot more with much fewer characters in Japanese than you can in English. So in translating that, they had to really like cut down on dialogue and things of that nature. And so some of the dialogue and writing can sound very, very basic, particularly in NES era RPGs. But as we talked about a little bit in our Terranigma podcast series, I think what that lends to is telling stories in a more mythic, classical nature.
That's right, yeah.
And so games that like lean into that, like Terranigma did in certain ways, and like this game does, really, really works.
Yeah.
It does it really well within the format and constraints of those early consoles, that Famicom and NES. And I think that like the technical writing even, right, if you compare Dragon Quest to say Final Fantasy 1, I think Dragon Quest's is much better.
Yeah.
Because it's actually going for that, early modern English. They're speaking in ways that are just, I don't know, like at a higher level than the way the characters and NPCs talk in Final Fantasy 1. And I was just really, really into it, like from the start. Now, that being said, if you didn't grow up in this time, like
it's hard for me to tell how it would feel.
It's I think there's some real reframing you need to do if say you are like in your early 20s or maybe a teenager now and you're like a big RPG fan and you're playing games like Metaphor Fantasio or Persona or
Expedition 33.
Trails in the Sky, Expedition 33, things of this nature from the modern age where there is just a lot of verbose dialogue and a lot of time that can be spent explaining things and years and years and years of evolution of the genre in terms of battle mechanics and a real focus on party, like the fact that you have 4 or 3 or 5 characters fighting together and they each have their own maybe classes and special abilities that have to work in tandem together to defeat certain bosses. This is before a time where a lot of those things really came into play. But that series, like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy and Phantasy Star and Ys and things like this, sort of pioneered and iterated on over the years. It's not until you get into the late stage NES games like Dragon Quest III or Final Fantasy III that you start seeing class changing and things like that, right? And the ability to sort of like really mix and match. So This comes way before that. And in Dragon Quest 1, you don't even fight with a party. You're just a single character. Maybe think of it a little more in the lines of something like an Elder Scrolls, where you're just role-playing one person, right?
Right.
That's really more what the game is. And so if you're a big JRPG fan of the modern era, and that's what you're expecting going into this HD2D remake, maybe you've even played a later stage Dragon Quest game like 11 or 8 or something like that. Or maybe even Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake that came out last year. Maybe played that one. And that's not how DQ1 is. You are the hero, and you are that one character, and you don't get a party of characters. And so I freaking love the game even still.
Yeah.
And I think that it does a lot of things that were just really revolutionary for the time. It worked on the back of games like Wizardry and Ultima, games like Dragon Slayer and Dragon and the Princess. Black Onyx was another one. Like, these are some of what you would consider the real, true first JRPGs. Dragon Quest is not like the first. It can't take the title of the first JRPG. But it set up many of the conventions Dragon Quest did that really just blew that genre up. Dragon Quest was an unbelievable success in Japan. They didn't have and have struggled, I think, to have the same success globally. Dragon Quest was really, really successful in Japan. But then Final Fantasy came after that and, eventually broke through to have more of a global audience, and now has become what it is. And so all of that to say that I think it might help you if you have been interested in trying this game, but you weren't expecting a lot of the things I just said. To look at the game in its place in the history of the genre and like where it came from, and the fact that many of your favorite games today owe their existence in one sense or another, or to some degree, to Dragon Quest. Because Dragon Quest literally led straight into Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy existed
the
because
next year.
Square and Sakaguchi, they saw Dragon Quest and the success it had, and they're like, we could probably do that, and started, making Final Fantasy because of it. So its impact on the industry and its legacy is immense, and I think it deserves a lot of respect for that reason. But even outside of all of those caveats, I think just a game in and of itself, I find it incredibly fun to play. I really like it.
There's a lot to explore. Like, the areas are pretty big. I'm not a fan of the encounter rate when you're in the world.
I'm going to talk about that a bit.
It's like 10 seconds in between battles. Now, luckily, the battles are short as well. And I do love the effect, kind of the fanfare at the end of each battle. It feels like, I haven't played the original, but it feels like this is the original fanfare.
All the music is the original music.
Really? Well, it just sounds,
I think they might have
updated.
They might have added a track or two, but for the most part, these are all exactly the same.
That's so cool. I love the world theme too. It's so just really fun traversing this whole area. And there's so much to explore. There's those little camps in the forest that you go to, and there's just even more to explore. And everywhere you go, it feels like a very big world. It feels like there's a lot happening here, and that it's very big. And it's fun to play. And the battles themselves, that makes sense. I've been waiting this whole game, wondering when I'm going to get a second player in the party, and that's good. It's good to know. I've not yet beaten one yet, but it's really I'm just way into it. It's so much fun, and it's such an interesting line to ride when you're trying to update something for modern audiences, yet still retain the parts about it that help put it in context of this is one of the early games. And a lot of people are playing it for, like you said, that reason. I'm playing this to become cultured in the video game landscape and understand how games were back then and understand it historically as one of the first great RPGs, right?
Yeah.
And if they update it too much, you won't get that anymore, right? So they can't update it too much, but they do have to update it somewhat so that modern players can have that the game will be more approachable for modern players. I feel like they've done a great job with that.
Yeah.
the tutorials, you can skip them. They just kind of pop up. I've noticed most remake games kind of are doing this nowadays, remakes of old games. They'll just throw a big scroll in your face and just say, hey, this is how this thing works. Skip this if you want. Feel free to skip it. But the world feels wonderful and full and lived in. There's lots of cutscenes. There's lots of people to talk to. It's really cool. And it's made me want to. And this is I think the mark of a successful game that is trying to ride that balance between modernizing it for modern audiences, yet retaining all the charm of the old game. I now want to play the original, like really.
That's
bad.
awesome.
And that is probably I think that's a pretty good measure for a game that is, this HD 2D kind of era that we've entered in maybe as of 10 years ago. And when games make me so intrigued as to want to go play the original, that's a success. I feel like that's what these types of remakes should be striving for.
Yeah. I really agree with that, actually. A lot of times I've played maybe a newer iteration of something and then got curious about the original.
Yeah.
Most recently, I did that with Persona 3 Reload, I think is the name of the remake, right? Yeah. I played that through the first month of the game, which was roughly 9 or 10 hours, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go back out and check out the PS2 version and see how these are different. But I had a really good time with it. And then you find the ways in which it's different. But this sparks a couple of things. So 2 things I want to do. One, I want to kind of visit all of those version differences and kind of talk about like what I feel like the spirit of the original game was, the appeal, like the true appeal, core appeal the original game was, and whether that's been retained in this remake. Because I think that's really important. We've done a lot of talking about remakes in the past. We just recently did a video on like what's the point of remakes, or it was titled something like that. And so if you want to get like our full thoughts on what we feel like a remake should be striving for, maybe go and see that video. But in short, I do think it's important to retain like what is the core appeal, what was like the main thing that made this a landmark title. And how do you retain that spirit and not lose that in this sort of transition many, many decades now in the future, where the whole landscape for the genre and just for the industry has changed so much?
Because you can feel that just playing it. You can feel like, ooh, this is an artifact of something old.
Yeah.
You can just feel it when you're playing. Kind of like certain movies. Like there was a huge spike in Lord of the Rings book sales when the Lord of the Rings movies came out, right? Because through the viewing of those movies, you could feel something of the old books, retained within them. Whereas of the newer Lord of the Rings material, those same spikes in book sales have not occurred, to at least not to the degree that they did when those movies came out.
Yeah.
And it's not least in part because while they have certainly updated things for like the new Amazon show, I feel like they've also lost a lot of things, and people aren't really so curious about the old stuff. It's just been modernized for the modern audience.
Right.
That's fine if that's what they wanted to do. But I do also feel like, there's a way to pay homage and respect to the past if that's what you're trying to do. And I feel like that's what they are trying to do with these games, with these HD remakes, that there's a way in which you have to let that stuff still shine through. You have to. Otherwise, people are going to say, oh, this is a decent game or not. And if they're not interested in the past or they don't care, the test is whether or not you can feel the charming elements without feeling the tedium, I hate this and want to turn off my console kind of thing.
Right. So one thing we didn't get into, but that I think you've just added in that other video we did on remakes, we got a little bit into the art preservation aspect.
Right.
And one sort of like added, I think, important thing that a remake can do in art preservation is create interest in the original game.
And I almost feel like that, now this is just my bias speaking, that should kind of be a primary motive.
Yeah.
In when you remake something is to draw people back to the original, because that's where the real magic happened. Don't get so full of yourself that whatever you're making today is going to be the new definitive version of the thing that was legendary 50, 60 years ago.
Right.
The better thing to do would be to humble yourself a little and to try to shed light and bring a new audience to that original piece, right?
Yeah.
The actual original art instead of the derivative, whatever you're doing now.
Now, this is not something that this game does. It's something that I think Halo, there's a remastered version of Halo where you could like toggle in between like the original graphics and the new graphics.
Now, Dragon Quest XI did something similar.
Dragon Quest XI basically made the game, well, they made the game 3 times. They made the like modern like PS4 version or PS4 version of the game that came bundled with a toggle to where you could turn on a 2D Super Nintendo looking version. It's cool. And then they had, of course, the 3DS version, I think, which was like an in between. It's like it's like a blocky 3D whole look to it.
That's so cool.
So they had 3 versions of Dragon Quest XI.
Every game should do this.
I understand that. I'm not necessarily calling for that. I agree, though. They should.
Everyone should do this. Everyone get some interns and make a pixel remake.
It would have been really cool, for instance, in the pursuit of what we're talking about, art preservation and creating interest in the original, had they allowed you to sort of like include the original Dragon Quest 1 and 2 in this package so that you could just go check out, what did it look like in 1986 or whatever. Well, like, 1989 for the English Dragon Warrior, but 1986 for the original Japanese Famicom version. I think that would have been really cool. But,
that would have been super cool.
In any case, I think that if you're creating a remake and you spark an interest in the player base of like, I wonder what's the same and what's different about this version, that's what happened to me. And that's why I spent an exorbitant amount of time playing every freaking version of the game I could so that I could explain some of that for this podcast. But in doing so, I just have gained such an incredible appreciation for Dragon Quest 1.
Yeah.
I have
kind of want to deep dive into how that game was made now.
Yeah. Like
what's the story here?
I didn't do much research into the development history for today, but I did a ton of research just into version differences and, you know, like how the games play and things like that. And so anyway, I want to talk about first the way in which I think it would be fair to criticize the HD 2D remake for having lost something.
Okay.
There's one specific way in which I think that may be the case for some original Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior players. And I actually did see this because I was trying to look up what people think about this new game and reading some of like the reviews on Steam and things like that. In the original Dragon Quest, and this is true of like Final Fantasy and a lot of games from that era, it's actually kind of a signature from that era of like RPG video games and just RPGs in general. They left a lot up to you to just go out there and find
in the
through
original.
Your exploration.
Okay.
They're not going to telegraph to you where you should go and what the name of the place you're looking for is. Final Fantasy 1, we've talked about this, is pretty notorious for this.
Yeah,
so you need to go to this area and so you'd have to rely on the little game manual that came with the package to like look up the world map and say, where is that thing that guy just talked about? If you don't have that, you're going to be pretty lost in these old NES and MSX and, you know, like really early PC RPGs and things like that.
Right, they couldn't waste precious characters to like tell you where things are if it's already in the perfectly good manual that you have no reason to not have.
It's so fascinating to me how like mandatory those manuals were, and a lot of times they had walkthroughs for the games in them, at least up to a certain point.
Oh, really?
And then I feel like those game manuals, they saw an opportunity to make money by selling those as separate like game guides, right? That you would buy. Like you guys had the Zelda one, I think. Right?
Yeah, we had a couple.
And then eventually the internet came around and game FAQs, and it was like, okay, now there's no reason to sell separate game guides anymore, despite the fact they had cool art and all this other stuff.
Yeah, that was one of the coolest parts.
Yeah, and then it was like, well, then now they just don't even provide game guide or even game packets at all. It's like a slip that's like a code to like go download some other thing.
Exactly. It's like some make an account on our website thing, you know, proof of purchase.
They're just like
register your copy.
Doesn't exist, but it was like so fundamental to the experience of this time.
Yeah.
And so anyway, without that, or even with that, a lot of times it's like you are just expected to like get out there and figure it out,
Yeah.
right? Like go places, talk to all the NPCs, and they're going to give you hints. And these were hints. These are not like directions.
Yeah.
These are hints about things that you have to go, okay, I'm going to try to remember that and maybe write that down. Or if you go into a dungeon, it's like, I need to like draw this layout because it's really hard to like figure out where to go in here.
Yeah.
And so there are two major changes to this HD 2D remake that might take away from that particular spirit of that era of RPGs, where there was a real heavy emphasis on the dungeon crawling part of it.
Right.
You're going through a dungeon. Did you bring enough healing items with you? You know, you need to be really careful about how you use those to have enough to, you know, restore yourself before the boss, but then also to get out of this place. Do you have items that can warp you out if you need to do that?
Right.
Because you might get a couple floors down here and come into an encounter that is just way too strong for you. And if you die, there's a pretty freaking huge penalty to that.
Yeah.
Right? Like in Dragon Quest's case, you're taken back to Tantagel Castle, no matter where else you were in the world, and you lose like half of your money.
Wow.
So there's like a pretty heavy penalty for that.
Dang.
And in the original, the Japanese original, they didn't have like a battery pack in the cart for saving the game.
Yeah.
They had a password system like a lot of other titles at the time did. If you remember maybe like Punch Out, right? Every time you'd get to like the next league, they'd give you a password so that if you had to turn the game off and come back, you could put that password in and continue from where you were.
Once again, you got to have your notepad and pencil ready
to write it down.
to write it down.
And so in the original Dragon Quest on the Famicom, you'd have to go to the king in Tantagel, and he would give you a password that you'd have to write down in order to continue your game from that point.
That's how you save.
That's how you saved.
That's funny. That did make Blockbuster, you know, a little more bearable. Though you didn't have to get your same copy again each time because you could never tell whether you would or not. Sometimes we did, and that was always a wonderful blessing. But when it's just the password, it's like, hey, any game will do.
Exactly. So anyway, what this means is your chances to save the game are very, very limited. You have to travel a long way back. They do provide. They call them Chimera wings in the new versions.
Yeah, Chimera wings.
But they were just called wings in the original that can fly you back there. And there's eventually a warp spell that will just take you back there. I think at like level, I want to say 15 or something like that, you unlock that spell. So they do provide quicker ways to get back, but especially in the early going, I mean, you got to walk a long way if you're going to go back to save the game. And you got to like weigh like what's worth it. And did I bring enough? And so the dungeon crawling aspect is what I'm getting to here. It's tough and it's dangerous and it's got you on the edge of your seat a little bit. This is the way Wizardry was in a huge, huge way, which is a big inspiration for games like Final Fantasy I and Dragon Quest, I'm sure.
So there are actual stakes is what you're saying.
Huge stakes.
And modern games don't really have stakes.
No.
It's just auto-save every 2 minutes.
So there's an auto-save almost after every battle.
Yes, every battle,
in this game. So if you die and you just load from your autosave, there's no penalty for losing a fight?
So were there not, the church system
they didn't have that.
With the clergy? Okay.
So that's an added feature in the sense that it brought it into parity with like the Super Nintendo era games.
Okay.
This became a convention of Dragon Quest later in in the series.
Here's a question then. Are there churches still in Dragon Quest 1 or
no?
There are no churches at all.
No. They've added those. Okay. I think they have some wayfarer like I don't know if they call them cathedrals or whatever that you can visit like kind of while you're traveling around. And in every town they have one, right?
Okay, yeah.
No, that was not something that was yet a convention of Dragon Quest until later in the series. So when they remade the game for the Super Famicom, they actually no, I think in the Super Famicom version you still save with the king. So this might be a convention that they added specifically for like the later remakes of it, because I think even Game Boy Color you save at the king, so you have to go back to the king. Though in the Game Boy Color version they do have sort of like a suspended save because it's a mobile game, right? So you might have to close it at any point.
Oh, right.
So it's like if you do this suspended save, it just closes the game out, and then you have to open up from that, and then it deletes that save. if that makes sense. So it's just I need to go right now, boom, boom, close it.
Yeah.
And then you can open it up and continue from there.
That's crazy.
But no, outside of that, I mean, almost every version of the game, you got to go back to the king to save the game. So they have an autosave feature, and you can save at the churches all over the world now. So that's a big difference. There's certainly not much consequence, if any at all, to dying. So you can just
even if you play on. Okay, we haven't talked about the difficulties. There's Draki Quest.
Yeah,
the difficulties are hilarious. Draki Quest and then Dragon Quest. I can't remember what the fourth one was, but it was Dragonair, or I can't remember what it is. That sounds like a Pokemon. Some type of. It's like a play on the word dragon. But even in the more extreme difficulty mode, would there still not be punishments as much to dying?
As far as I understand it, I haven't played on the highest difficulty. I played in the middle difficulty, but I'm pretty sure auto-saving is still a thing there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it is in the whole game.
So I would assume not.
Wow, dang, man. So even the most extreme difficulty is not as hard as it was when you first.
It's hard, but there's just not as much. You don't lose as much when you die.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's still some very tough battles, and
I'm sure
that still require making sure you're at the right level, which requires a lot of grinding. That's kind of just a thing you expect. If you haven't played Dragon Quest is a grindy series. And I'm going to talk about the grinding here in a minute. I've had a bit of a change of heart on grinding in general in RPGs as of late. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Usually games with a high encounter rate are just very grindy.
Yeah, and they have a high encounter rate for a reason.
Right.
It's because you need to fight a lot of battles in order to be at the levels that you need to be to progress the game. So it's like they're throwing lots of battles at you because they want you to level up. So no, but getting back to the ways in which this modern version of the game is outside of the spirit. So we've talked about dungeon crawling and item management
and the save system,
all leading to a really high sense of stakes when you're going into a difficult place or a place you don't know yet and you're not sure what you're going to encounter.
Yeah.
And you might get halfway through it and you're like, should I finish this now? Or should I go back and save and level up a bit and come back?
Which I'll tell you, of all the games when I was young that I stopped playing in the middle of, it was usually because I got way too far in a dungeon and couldn't beat the dungeon, and I didn't want to take all that time to get back to that same point again, and I dropped the game. Right?
Yeah.
Those are the times when I do it. And I think that's what they're trying to remedy.
That is why modern games don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it was realized that we make these games all hardcore and there's real stakes to it and you have to you're sweating it out.
It's like real life.
There's an appeal to that, but it's a hardcore appeal.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would do that. They would just drop it if it was too hard or something.
Right. I did when I was little.
And so as the industry has come to a place where games cost so much to make and they need to cast a much wider net in order to make the money to make a profit on the game, they've essentially just made games easier and easier and dumbed them down to such a degree to where there's not much lost when you die. You can just try it again to keep people sticking with it instead of dropping it, so that it's not just these chosen few who actually finish the game and can have their bragging rights or whatever.
See,
everyone can finish it.
Think about the commercials back then too.
Prepare thyself well, Dragon Warrior. Thy most challenging quest ever awaits. Go with speed, but go with patience. Seek out an arsenal, a dragon scale, a torch, and magic herbs. Use wisdom and cunning to choose thy commands, for the Dragon Lord is a fierce rival. Horrible and treacherous minions all guard the Evil One's island castle. Art thou ready, young one?
Yes, King Warrior.
And so begins a new epic, Dragon Warrior.
Nintendo, now you're playing with power.
It's like, do you have what it takes to be a hero? And they really meant it. They really meant it.
They really did.
Only 1% of you are going to beat this game that we're shipping 1 million copies of. Only 10,000, maybe 50, maybe 5% of you are going to actually beat this game. The rest of you are going to wimp out and you're still going to have good memories, but you're not going to spend 60 hours and beat the whole game. Right? Okay, it's not nearly that long. Older games weren't quite that long. But it could be if you're not great at it. But yeah, that was like a promise. Like, do you have what it takes to be a hero? And the commercials for games nowadays are not like that because that's not the appeal anymore.
Right.
But look at old commercials and look at how they marketed this stuff. It was basically, you beat this game, you're one of the few.
Yeah.
You'll be a real hero even within the world of this game. But Dragon Quest HD 2D is just too cute. It's just a cute game. It's just adorable. It's an adorable game.
This is interesting. So on the one hand, it's not that kind of like sweat it out, make plans, draw the maps down on a piece of paper, write down, all of this stuff to like help you figure out what to do next, or this guy said this thing. That's actually one cool thing they added to this.
Yeah.
You can press start in the middle of a conversation with NPCs
and to
like remember what the guy said.
Yeah.
That's like cool. An analog for this guy's giving me a hint about something. I don't want to forget this. I'm going to write it down on paper so that I can remember that hint. That guy's saying, oh, if I go back to call and I walk 4 steps down from the well, there's something that I can find there. I need to remember that. Let me write that down on my little notepad and then go back to call and try to dig there. Oh, there's the fairy flute,
Yeah.
In this version, that spot's glowing on the ground from the time you first go there.
Right. It's
so regardless of whether you've been given that hint or even found that hint yet, because it's all the way down in what's the name of the town? Rimeldar?
Oh, I can't remember.
I believe.
Yeah.
Which is a later stage in the game. You go to Call first. You'll find that fairy flute just by investigating the glowing spot on the ground. You know what I mean?
After the puff sequence.
Yes. So,
which I'm guessing also was not in the original game.
No, it was in Japanese, but not in English.
Okay.
They censored it in English. But so like there's elements like that, right? That are just hallmarks of the age the game came out in. And if you're expecting like those types of things to be retained in a game made in the modern age, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So, on top of that, another thing I was really bummed to see was that when you go into dungeons in the original game, you have to take a torch with you because you have zero visibility.
I thought of this.
You have zero visibility. There's one
black
square your character standing on. It is black everywhere else. Yeah. And you have to use a torch, which is a one-use item in the dungeon, to light up a very small space around you.
I love old games.
To where you're like bumping into walls constantly, trying to like find out where to go.
So it's one thing to have a maze. It's another thing to be like, you can't even see the maze.
Can't see the maze.
You have to sketch this thing out as you go.
And the what's the word I'm looking for? What they're going for with that is that the torch doesn't light up the whole environment.
Yeah.
You can't fetching see in here. You're underground. It is completely dark.
Yeah.
The distance that this torch casts light is all you can see.
Right.
And so in every version of the game, prior to this one, I believe, that mechanic was retained. Like you had to buy torches and you had to take them with you into dungeons.
I thought of that because the thought kind of hit me all of a sudden while I was underground. And I was like, oh, my character just has a torch. Like it's not, there just isn't a deal. Like, does it go out or do I need to, and it just wasn't even really mentioned. You just have a torch.
You have a torch, but not only that,
whenever you need it,
you can see
even without the torch.
entire freaking environment anyways.
The torch just provided some nice lighting effects, basically.
Yeah.
You can see anyways, yeah.
You can see anyways.
Yeah.
And in the original game, there were 2 methods. You either used a torch, which was a very small area around you, or eventually you got the radiant spell, which would cast a wider area. So it's like a spell that's lighting.
Lumos.
Almost like I could risk a little more light.
There you go, Gandalf.
Lord of the Rings, and he like the light in the corridor of
Mines of Moria.
The Mines of Moria or whatever. It's kind of like that. But the more you walk, that starts shrinking over time, and you have to like recast it again. And then it starts shrinking the more you walk, and then you got to recast it again. So those are kind of the 2 ways that you deal with the darkness of the caves and stuff. And I really liked that in the original, and there's nothing like that retained in the remake.
Really?
The dungeons feel very much like just any kind of modern RPG dungeon. The layouts are pretty similar. They have heavily changed some of the dungeon maps, like the craggy caves, but that was actually done all the way back in the Super Famicom version. So It wasn't like a just for this version thing. That was an iterative step. Point being, that element, that sweating it out, drawing, writing things down on paper, trying to figure out the clues, not so much retained in this. And if that is a big deal for you, I would understand that. On top of that, the original game was very open, very much like a lot of games were in that time. The Legend of Zelda was a lot this way too.
Yeah,
you could do
North,
dungeons
South, East,
in any
West,
order.
yeah.
You can go get this thing first. You could not save Princess Gwaelin if you didn't want to do that. Like there was all these things you could skip or just do this and this in a different order. And I think an attempt to give the game a stronger sense of narrative, to like build on the narrative and give it like a bigger scope and to just expand on it in a way to where it doesn't feel as basic as NES storytelling did. Yeah. They have made the game more linear, where it's like they're telegraphing to you need to go here first, then you need to go here, then you need to go here. And you can't really go out of order of that now. And so the combination of those two things, I could see someone who is a big fan of the original going, this isn't really the Dragon Quest that I grew up with and knew and loved. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah, interesting.
I am okay with this.
Me too.
I am totally okay with this.
Because getting rid of some of that is part of what I mentioned before when I talked about you do have to get rid of some of the tedious aspects. Well, you don't have to. But to market towards a modern audience, some of the tedium of old JRPGs just won't fly anymore. Yeah. And you've brought up two of them.
Yes, so exactly. So
they were not long for this world.
Really, really love going back to NES RPGs. I play the original Final Fantasy over and over and over again. I do not play any of its remakes. I do not play the PlayStation version or the Game Boy Advance version or even the Pixel remaster or anything. I dabble with those for a few minutes to kind of like see what changes, and I go all the way back to the NES Final Fantasy. I like them better.
That's good. It's almost like if you're already familiar with the original art, the remakes won't likely add much for you, right? Yeah. But if you're like me and you never played Dragon Quest before ever in your life, except for 11, whatever, Dragon Quest 1 before ever in your life, this is the thing to play that will spark that interest that will make you now want to play the original. I didn't really have any desire to play the original Dragon Quest until I played this one.
Yeah.
And now I want to. Yeah. Right.
And I would say in this case, like being that guy who like, I'm going to play the original Final Fantasy over the Pixel remaster or something like that.
Yeah.
I really like the HD 2D remake a lot.
See, this makes me wonder. They just did this with Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. Are we going to get a Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 HD 2D remake?
I don't even know if we want to go down this rabbit hole because it is so endlessly frustrating to me that they did not do that.
Right.
And they did the Pixel remasters instead.
Yeah.
I can't believe they didn't do this for Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But at some point they're going, it's the same company, right? Now I know it's different divisions and R&D and all this stuff.
Yeah,
but
we'll see.
If this is successful, which I think it has been, these new Dragon Quest re-releases, you can expect that from those games. But if I've already played Final Fantasy 1, I don't know, I will still be interested to play an HD 2D of that, sure, for curiosity's sake. But having already experienced the original, I would be more attuned to they left this out. Oh, they didn't do this right. Oh, no. Whereas if I had never played it, it would serve its purpose of sparking that interest.
Here's where I think the HD 2D remake sets itself apart as a valid version of the game in and of itself.
Okay, let's hear it.
It is in those expanded story sequences.
Yeah, they're pretty interesting.
So, for instance, here's a really great example. There's a scene where you're on your way to Cole for the first time, where you come up to a bridge that like sort of leads to this other side, like the eastern side of the continent. And there's a little scene that plays out where a soldier has like collapsed from his wounds and
so
is
that's
dying.
Not in the original?
No, it is, but it's different. Ooh. So. And there's a whole scene that plays out where like the whole Kingsguard comes up and they talk about, the princess has been captured and King's trying to keep this a secret and, to not like set a panic, but there's all these rumors going around and we're not sure this cave this guy came from is really dangerous. And it is because of the dragon you have to fight there. Even in the original is like, holy balls, this is really hard. The dragon that's protecting sort of the place where the princess is kept is like really hard. So they're like building on it in a narrative sense. Like, this is going to be a really hard fight. And if you've played the original and you know how hard that fight is, you're like, oh, I know what they're talking about. Like, I know what they're foreshadowing here. So there's like really good foreshadowing with decent voice acting and like much better writing and like, you know, a greater sense of storytelling generally in this scene that sets this up. Right. In the original game, that NPC who says, go tell the king the whole regiment that was sent to find the princess was wiped out. He's just a guy in the top right corner of Tantagel village. He's just like laying on the ground up in the top right corner. And you go talk to him. He says, please relay to the king. We all died. And it's over.
Wow.
And you might not even find that guy. You might not even talk to him, right?
Because there's no imperative.
Because there's no moment that stops to like narratively give that information to you as it does here. So the HD 2D version is, I mean, obviously better from just a storytelling perspective because it's giving you those moments of foreshadowing and it's kind of expanding on the same ideas and characters that were there, but that were not mandatory to see. On the other hand, it makes it so that the game's got to be linear in how you progress through it, right? So you have a choice there. Do we improve and expand on the storytelling and make the storytelling better, or and lose that sense of like go do whatever you want whenever you want and figure it out and explore, or do we retain the original and like maybe lose some people because this story is too basic? That I can see that being a tough choice, and in current year, the need to be like, this is what's going to appeal more, and this is what's going to, you know, I think make the game sell better and be more well received in the modern age. So I respect the choice, though I understand why a person who grew up with the game might feel like it's lost something there. But I personally feel like you said, the only reason I've gone back and played all the old versions is because this game was coming out, and I wanted to. It made me curious about the original version, and so I feel like it's a successful remake purely on its ability to do that. Right. So that's it in terms of anything that I would really throw out there as maybe a valid criticism of this HD 2D version. Outside of that, I have loved everything about it. The music in particular, I love what they've done.
It's cool
with the compositions.
It's so interesting the way that they've done it too. You don't get like especially out when you're on the world map, right? You'll get kind of like these rotating duets of instruments. It's not always like this big, music. It's often a solo violin with maybe some other instrument accompanying it. And it's beautiful. It just feels really good. I like it a lot.
Yeah. But here's the other way in which the identity of Dragon Quest is really well retained, right? Dragon Quest has always been, I think, a game where its core appeal, on top of like those other things I might have mentioned about its exploration and, sweating it out and like all those things maybe were something that the big time fans of the original game loved about it.
Yeah.
It has always been a game that is just endlessly charming. Like its monster designs, for instance, are like purposefully cute and silly. Yeah. I mean, you got characters or monsters in this game called like Rat Skull, right? Like Rascal, like the pun there.
Rascal,
but it's Rat Skull. Or like Luna Tick. It's a tick. It's like the insect, but it's Luna Tick, right?
Or just the jellies, the little drops.
The slimes.
Slimes, that's it.
Yeah.
Like that's just a funny idea for a bad guy just in and of itself.
Yeah. And over the years, Dragon Quest has even more and more, as they've, had capacity to expand things like voice acting and more text for dialogue, have leaned into this tone for the series, which goes more in this direction of a mythic, fairy tale, comedic, cartoony kind of charm to it that I have always really liked a lot.
I like that
about
too.
it. And that existed all the way back to the beginning. All those monster designs and all those silly names and all that stuff.
I was wondering that, actually. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Like, because a lot of this stuff, it's just funny. And I wonder how a lot of the monster designs and stuff come across.
Exactly
in the original.
same.
That's so cool.
All the way back to the original. Those designs are cartoony enough to where they could be drawn in the original game in a way to where it's perfectly retained. I mean, I'll show you on screen. In all the different versions, you take the same ghost or the same skeleton or the same slime, and in every version they look identical. They have always kept that aspect.
I like that.
And that's what I meant when I said earlier that I feel like Dragon Quest, one reason I respect it a lot is because I feel like it has always retained its spirit.
Right.
And has always been true to its traditions. And of course, new traditions get created as the series goes on. There's new things they try that like, oh, that's great. We love that. Keep that. And some of those traditions that came later get added back into the remake of the original one, right?
Yeah.
Where it's maybe like saving at the cathedral with the confessions, right?
Right, yeah. Isn't that
That's a convention that came later, but that they've added back into this. And so I feel like changes like that are fine.
Yeah.
That still feels very Dragon Quest,
very much so,
right? Although it was something that came later. So there's a lot of that kind of thing where it's like, we're going to put this type of system or like magic from this game that came later, we're going to implement some of those ideas back into the earlier ones. And in the places where they've done that, I think it works really, really well and makes the game a little bit more complex than the original NES game was.
Yeah.
And something that you can experiment a little bit more in battle mechanics and things like that. And so I think in those regards, even changes to the original feel in line with the spirit of Dragon Quest, right?
I like
so
that.
I like those changes almost universally. But as far as like major beats and like the length of the game and where you're expected to do some grinding and even like the equipment that you know is going to be good, like that magic armor is really expensive, but my goodness, is it worth it to grind to get that if you don't have the money. That's a really important piece of equipment for that particular kind of mid-game part where it's like, ooh, these enemies are starting to ramp up in difficulty a little bit, and I'm not feeling confident. That's still true here. That's not as big a consequence if you die, but you're still running into enemy groups who are like, oh crap, not these guys, run away.
Yeah.
And so like I feel like those moments where you're like, oh crap, not this guy, are still there. Even though if I die to him, it's all right. I'm not going to lose all my money and have to go all the way back to Tantagel again.
Yeah.
But you still remember like, oh crap, I probably need to level up a little bit here. I'm not quite strong enough. I probably need that magic armor. I probably need that broadsword. I need to take some time to like gear up a little bit. I'm not ready for this next part. All the places in which that was true in the original, it's also true in the remake. So I think they did a pretty good job again, just like walking that tightrope, threading that needle in the ways where they needed to make the changes that would make a modern audience buy the game, but where they're not totally betraying or changing unnecessarily the things about the original that were special or that people will remember playing this. Maybe you haven't played the game in 30-something years.
Yeah.
And you haven't played it since then. There's going to be a lot of those moments. You go, oh man, I remember that. Oh man, I remember that.
Yeah.
But here's like the last thing I'll say on the story expansion and changes and things like that. In all of these JRPGs, right, they have these big worlds. So there's like a larger story. Let's just call it like a circle like that big of like what's happening in this world.
Okay.
But we're in the point of view of our party of characters or our character or whatever who sees this much of it as they move around. Okay. But there's still a lot of things going on outside of that. And I feel like what they've done with Dragon Quest HD 2D is they've just widened that circle a little bit
Okay.
so that you're seeing a little bit more. you see what happened when Princess Gwaelin was kidnapped.
Yep.
You didn't see that in the original game. They did add a cutscene at the very, very beginning when you boot up the Game Boy Color version.
Oh, yeah, where you save the people. There's
like a dragon that comes in and you see him holding the light orb, and you see Princess Gwaelin in her bed or whatever.
Yes. Yeah,
so
yeah.
they did add like a little cutscene there to sort of, but this version's much more. And it's actually different. She's not captured out of the castle. She's captured on the way somewhere.
Yeah.
But they've expanded her role a little bit. And a lot of things that are added too are ways that they're connecting this into Dragon Quest III, right? So it's like Dragon Quest III was made 2 years after Dragon Quest I. They hadn't made the game yet in the original. So after they made that, a lot of the changes they've made in subsequent remakes are about connecting the two games together into the loop, because it's a prequel story. Dragon Quest III is. Yeah. And so like they'll add certain things like the whole Rubis,
the summon, or
and then like they have Zalen, who's the ancestor of Galen, the bard who comes from Dragon Quest III. So they have moments like that, and Robin Hood, right?
Robin Hood
is an ancestor of a character from Dragon Quest III.
Oh,
so
fun!
They've added characters and events and things like that, but it's not just for the sake of adding or just making the storytelling appear deeper. I think a lot of times it's specifically because they have this trilogy, this Erdrick trilogy of HD 2D remakes, and they've already released Dragon Quest III. And so they're tying in events from that game into Dragon Quest I now.
Okay.
And just making the trilogy feel more cohesive together as a complete arc or a complete trilogy, right?
I always wondered why they released 3 first.
Because
this
chronologically it comes first.
Interesting, very interesting.
I still would not recommend playing
release
it that way.
order is always.
I'm always a release order guy.
Yeah.
I think it's cooler to go through Dragon Quest I not knowing what they're referencing.
Because that's how it was meant to be.
Yeah.
That's how the artist, intended it.
Because you get curious about, what happened in that earlier time?
Yeah.
What was Erdrick really like?
Because they're referencing it all the time.
Like what was the world like back then?
Yeah.
There's these curiosities about what happened in the past that then you go play Dragon Quest III and you get those filled in for you. It feels like a myth.
Yes,
that is sort of like coming to life and that you're piecing together when you don't know what has happened yet.
I like that. Mystery, it's kind of like with Star Wars and the Clone Wars, right?
Yeah.
It was cooler before you
saw
it.
Exactly.
I also like the Narnia books. I'm having to they only sell them in chronological.
Oh, really?
Well, story
4 is first, right?
Yeah, well, it's 2 is first, and then 4,
first.
and then
like
3, and then 1, and then 5 and 6.
It's like way out of order.
Yeah, it's totally out of order. But so I'm having to. We're not reading. We didn't read 1 first. We read 2 first with my kids.
What's the one where they go on the voyage, the sail?
That's
the boat?
4, I think, or 4 or 5. Dawn Treader.
I thought that was the first one, wasn't it? Or am I
no,
totally
the
wrong?
first one. Well, the first release one is Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
They reference the heroes from.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the first one, when you buy it chronologically now, is the one with the rings. Well, I can't remember what it's called. The Magician's Nephew.
Oh yeah.
But that one wasn't written till later. So, anyways, we didn't read it. I'm having to look up when they were written before I pick the one out to read to my kids.
Yeah.
I just don't like doing that. But that's the way that they sell them now. And I sort of get it. There was something like that. I feel like a lot of Marvel people who are into Marvel have a fascination with the chronology of events instead of release order. Star Wars sort of introduced that with the prequels, but it's almost always from the art. If you care about the artist's perspective, which I think you should, what they were trying to do, what story they were trying to tell, they hadn't made the other ones yet. You have to go with release order. That's the only legit way to do it if you're respecting it as an art form.
Right.
But if you just think that it would be interesting to see the story in chronological order, all right, that's fine too, I guess.
I feel the same way about
at least the first time you play it, maybe it should be release order. Every time after that, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I feel the same way about the Silmarillion or something. You shouldn't read the Silmarillion.
Don't read that first.
Before you've read The Lord of the Rings or
Who cares
or the
if it
Hobbit.
came first?
You probably shouldn't even read The Lord of the Rings before you read The Hobbit. I mean,
you're right.
You should start with The Hobbit.
Start with The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And a lot of it too is the philosophy. The artist is working through their own philosophies and learning things and growing themselves, and those things are included into later books, be they prequels or not. Yeah. Anyways, that's just kind of how I feel about that. But this game was awesome.
It was great. There's one last thing I want to do before we wrap up here, and I want to talk about version differences and the things I like in each one.
Okay.
So, just to create some interest in going back to the original stuff, if you want to do
the interest is there. I would love to play it.
So we have the Famicom 1986 version in Japan. We already talked about the password system. So they don't have like a save feature in that the way they do in the NES, where you go talk to the king. The king says, I will record your deeds in the scrolls of
the
whatever,
tome,
the records of whatever. Yeah. Like, so he writes it down and there's an actual save file. It gets saved. You can turn the game off, come back to it, reload that save. That was...
So the NES has that?
The NES version of the Dragon Warrior. Okay, so if you don't know this either, the game is called Dragon Quest in Japan. They had an issue with copyright in other territories of the world, including North America. So they couldn't call it Dragon Quest in the US release, in the English release. They had to call it Dragon Warrior. That was true.
That name fits pretty well with the story as well, though, I thought.
Yeah, they had to keep that naming convention all the way up through Dragon Quest VII.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It wasn't until Dragon Quest VIII came out that they could finally globally call it Dragon Quest VIII. And since then, they've been going back and re-releasing them as Dragon Quest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now 7 Remake is in the works.
Oh, cool.
So now it's called Dragon Quest. It was originally called Dragon Warrior for a long time. So in the NES version, Dragon Warrior, you could save that way. Not so in the Famicom. You just got passwords. So that's one difference. They had to go talk to the king. The king would give you a different password every time. They called it the spell of restoration. So he was he was telling you a spell, essentially, was the way they framed it in the story.
That's funny.
He's giving you a spell that you can use to like recall or restore where your progress, right?
Very cool.
All of the character sprites in the game, including the main hero, are always facing forward, no matter which direction you're moving.
Yeah.
This is absolutely hilarious. I love it though. Actually, there's a charm to the really, really basic looking character sprites of the Famicom version. They look almost like Atari character sprites, right?
That's pretty fun.
They look super rudimentary.
Wow. Super
ancient looking in comparison to what you would even expect on something as ancient as the NES in terms of character sprites. They're just very low detail and really basic. But what's even funnier about it is the fact that he's like crab walking all over the world. He's just like moving sideways everywhere. Forward, backward, sideways.
I have an image in my mind of how this will look.
It's so freaking funny.
And I want to see this now.
Now, here's where it gets even better. And this is where I really lean into. From the beginning, Dragon Quest was meant to have that fun, silly charm to it.
Okay.
The characters' feet move. All the characters' feet kind of move even when they're not walking. You know, almost like strategy RPG games where like the characters are just like marching in place.
Treadmilling, yeah.
So they all do that even when they're not moving.
Okay.
But it goes in rhythm to the music.
I love that.
So as you're running around the game and he's crab walking like this, it makes it look even more like he's dancing everywhere. He's dancing everywhere. He's like, he's moonwalking and dancing and sliding around and just going on his adventure to kill dragons and save princesses.
There's something so cool about that.
It is so funny, dude. Oh my gosh, I freaking love it. And so,
that's great.
As a result of that, because the sprite doesn't like turn to the sides or back, right? When you go to talk. So this is something different about games from this time too. To do anything, you had to pull up a menu to do it. So you don't just like walk onto the stairs and walk down the stairs.
Right. There's no action button.
This was before that. Yeah. Well, you don't even need an action button for most games for when you just touch a door or touch stairs.
You just walk in.
You just walk in or walk down by standing on the tile.
Yeah, good point. It's like an event
square. In this game, everything required you to bring a menu up first and choose what you wanted to do on that tile.
That's crazy.
It's
like text-based games.
It's a hallmark of
yeah.
old
Right.
PC RPGs, right? So you had to walk to a tile, press A to bring up the menu, and then choose talk, and then you would talk to somebody. Now, in the NES version, it chooses talk based on which direction you're facing. So you have to face the character, and the character I'm facing, if I choose the talk ability, it's going to assume I'm talking about the tile that the character's facing. But because in the Famicom version, they don't face any directions, it would bring up a separate menu again and say, do you want to talk to the tile above, below, or on the left or right? Wow. So you had to go menu, talk to the guy below me in order to talk to someone.
Now, people in the comments will have to tell me if any of you miss that from old games and
This
wish
is
that was
considered
never
tedious by modern people. I loved it.
Did you?
I kind of wished it was in the NES version.
I want to try it.
These are relics of a time that I don't know. I just really appreciate going back to old stuff and seeing
me too.
how they came up with answers to hardcore limitations of the time and constraints that they had to work in. What are the solutions they come up with for, like, it's going to be confusing. How do we get the player with 2 buttons to say they're talking to this guy, but they can't face the person?
Right.
Okay, we'll just like program another menu that comes up and they have to choose which direction they want to talk in. Right? So that's funny. And that's unique to only the Famicom version because this was all updated for the NES. Additionally, if you wanted to walk downstairs, you had to stand on the tile for the stairs, bring up the menu, and go stairs to walk down the stairs. If you wanted to open a door, you had to stand in front of the door, open the thing, and go down to the door command to open doors.
Wow.
You have to open the command to go to your spells, open the command to go to your items, open the command to go to a whole bunch of other things. Additionally, equipment was interesting. So you didn't like have an equipment menu the way that you expect today. You would just go buy a piece of equipment and the guy would automatically like equip it to you and sell the previous thing you had.
Oh, interesting. So it's swap them out.
Yeah, it's just swapping every time you get a new one.
Okay.
Right. So that's kind of like, for the most part, a setup to like how the original game worked. Was there any other thing? Interacting with objects or talking to non-player characters. Okay, we already talked about that. So in the NES version, the changes that were made were battery-backed saving system.
But still at 10 to go.
Yes. You still have to save with the king at Tantajel only.
But, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so it's called Dragon Warrior rather than Dragon Quest. Characters were given directional appearance, so they turn to the side when they walk or back or whatever. And so they didn't have a need for that additional menu for talk anymore. Coastline graphics were slightly upgraded to appear better. Also, just the character sprites in general are much better.
Really?
Way better. They don't look like, Atari level sprites. They look a lot more in line with what you expect from JRPG type sprites from the NES, Super NES era.
Okay.
So those were mostly it. Those were most of the changes. Of course, then the game is in English. So then the Super Famicom version comes out. The hero is able to carry multiple weapons and armor items, and now you have an equipment menu where you can go swap those out like you would come to expect in that era. The scale of the dungeons is greatly increased. So the dungeons, like the map layouts are relatively the same except for a couple of ones where they redesigned them entirely, like Craggy Cave or what was called Rock Cave in the original.
Okay.
But they're just bigger. So like, and the region around you with the torch is like a little larger. So you're not just like constantly like running into walls all the time. Bump, 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 bump. So you can see a little bit more, but you still can't see like a ton. So like you still got to kind of pay attention. Wait, have I gone down this way yet or not? Or you can still get a little lost. So Craggy Cave was greatly redesigned. The experience needed to gain levels was decreased. So there's not nearly as much grinding in the Super Famicom version. Also, you're given more gold by monsters. So the time spent grinding is greatly reduced. And what I noticed in playing this version was like, wow, this game feels a lot easier all of a sudden. So the Super Famicom and the Game Boy Color versions feel a lot easier than the NES and Famicom versions do, just because they decreased the amount of grinding you had to do to get money and to get experience to level.
Okay. And the Super Nintendo, did they have like updated textures and sprites? And maps?
Yeah. Much more colorful. All the sprites are redone. All the tiles for the maps are redone. Like the trees look totally different. I still think in this version that Tantagel Castle and the town were separate maps. So like you walked out to the world map from the castle and had to walk over to the town. They were like separate places. They got combined, I believe, maybe for the first time in this new HD 2D remaster, where it's all, you leave that one city and the castle is in the city, so to speak.
Okay.
So there was also, I don't know if you are aware of this in the original Final Fantasy, because you just played it recently, of the Power Peninsula. So there's
maybe
kind of this like arbitrary line across the map between the north and south, where end game level enemies are in the north and lower level enemies are in the south of this line that they drew.
Okay.
But there's a peninsula that sort of crosses that line a little bit.
Okay.
So there's like 4 tiles on the edge of this peninsula, pretty close to like where the second city of Final Fantasy is. Okay. So you're relatively close enough to be able to go back and rest and get your items.
But you'll get a lot more XP.
But you can get way more XP if you can happen to beat one of those really hard enemies.
Just one and then go
so
heal.
You can level up really fast.
Interesting.
They had something kind of like that in the original release of Dragon Quest, where south of Tantagel, you come across like a mountain border, but on the very bottom line of hills that you can walk across, it had enemies from the other side of the mountain range that are higher level. And so you're relatively close to Tantagel, where you can get your MP restored for free.
Right.
And if you have the heal spell, you can heal yourself, go back and get a free restoration, come back and fight, without having to do a walk all the way freaking around the continent to get back.
Yeah.
And you can level up faster. They removed that in the Super Famicom version. So you can no longer exploit that area for leveling up. So that's different. The dragon guarding the princess is given an on-screen sprite. So in the original, as you're going through the swamp cave on the right side of the map, you'll just cross a tile and all of a sudden, what the fetch, this really hard dragon attacks you.
Oh, I see.
Now there's an actual sprite there to indicate, oh, there's a dragon enemy coming up. I should probably heal or something. Right? So you know it's coming. Shrines are given world map sprites rather than just a staircase sprite. So like when you go to the rain shrine, it's just like it was just like staircase sprite on the map. Now it's given its own kind of building.
It actually looks really cool. The rain shrine looks awesome. Well, my favorite line from the game so far is somebody on the other side of the continent saying, you know, there's that over that way is the rain shrine. No idea what it's used for, though. Or no, don't know what its use could be. I'm like, a rain shrine? What do you think it was used for, man? To make it rain.
Yep. See, those types of things were the hints in the original game to like, maybe I should go check that out. Right. But it's something as really like basic and ambiguous as that. Oh, I wonder what that thing is. Oh, maybe that's an indication you should go look at it, right? Shrines were given a unique soundtrack in the Super Famicom version. Same music which is used for shrines in Dragon Quest II. The Lyre of Ire. See, it just loves to play with words like this. This game, it's so charming for that reason. Will summon any enemy in the area that you're in when used, as opposed to the NES version, which would only summon monsters from Tantagel. So this is supposed to be an item that you want to level up faster. And so you're trying to like summon more monsters to fight you. But like you're summoning monsters that are level 1 way back over there. And that was probably an unintended bug or something of the original version of the game. Erdrick's tablet, which was in Erdrick's Hollow, right, where you go and you have the message from Erdrick, the ancestor who tells you like what you need to do. Yeah. It was turned into a big tombstone that appears in the place of what was originally just a chest on the ground.
Oh, really?
That you opened and then you
and
just
it had
found
a tablet.
That had that message inside.
Now it's got that really cool, like obelisk.
So they like built that out and made it like cooler visually.
Sweet.
And then the music of the Damdara was changed from the dungeon theme to the Requiem from Dragon Quest II. So just some music changes. Okay, so then we go to the Game Boy Color version. Many names in the game have been shortened due to the GBC's display constraints. So Loto instead of Erdrick. We've already kind of talked about that. A few convenience changes such as field log saves that quits to the main menu. Kind of already talked about that too in case, oh crap, I got to go like right now. I'm getting off the bus. I got to close the game. And so it just gives you a field log save. And then the Golem guarding Mercado is given an on-screen sprite. Now, that being said, I really like the Game Boy Color version.
Really?
I think I like it better than the Super Famicom version. There is something about when the Super Famicom came around, I think this is true for Final Fantasy games too. It was like, we have all these colors we can use now. Everything's just freaking colorful as fetch. It's just like everything's so saturated and so green and so purple and so red that like a lot of early Super Famicom games were just like absolutely like bleeding saturation in terms of their color palettes, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but it felt like well, now we have the capability, but did we stop to ask whether we should for this particular game or whatever? The Game Boy Color is obviously limited, and so there's I just love the sprite work of Game Boy games. I think that sprites are really cool. I love the chiptune sound of Game Boy games as well.
The sound is very,
I like
it too.
I like that sound better than the NES music, better than the Super Famicom music. There's some, like even going back to The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, right? They did a remake for that. I will always prefer the Game Boy version because there's just something about that sound, those chip tunes that just like sounds so clean and so cool to me. And so the combination of the sprites themselves and the music and like the color palette, I actually prefer the Game Boy Color version to the Super Famicom version, which I found very interesting. So if I were to, but otherwise they're very much the same game outside of the limited characters for dialogue, right? So like they don't speak the we, thee, and thous.
Oh, right.
And the characters are called different things. But otherwise, as far as going for like what was changed from the original NES to the Super Famicom, Game Boy Color version has all of that, plus an easier way to save the game, plus music I like better and sprites I like better. So I actually prefer the Game Boy Color version.
Oh, very nice.
And I believe it was your brother Parker who played a lot of Dragon Quest III, the Game Boy Color version.
Really?
So I have kind of a memory of him playing that and being into that.
I remember we had it, but I didn't understand it and I didn't play it.
That's a good game. We will certainly be talking more Dragon Quest in the future, and we'll get around to DQ3. But I was a really big fan of the Game Boy Color version of these games. Then there's the cell phone version. This was made in like 2004 for like flip phones,
like the Nokia.
Yeah. It's like one of those things that then got ported to be for smartphones and then got ported again to be like a Switch version, and it's garbage. Don't touch it. Don't even look at it. It will like hurt your eyes. It's so bad. And then that brings us forward to the HD 2D remake, which is greatly changed in all the ways we've mentioned, but the overall package is one that I have been having a blast with. I really, really like it a lot. And I totally recommend getting it. If you have never played like the original Dragon Quest games, these HD 2D remakes are really solid.
Yeah, they're fun games.
They have a really nice now cohesion between the three, right? So if you want to play these original DQ, like see where it all came from, these HD 2D remakes go really well together in terms of their look. I love like the visuals. I think they're fantastic.
And it kind of like shocks me, the pixel art and how they were able to do it, because it's not even 8 character sprites. It's like 32.
Yeah, there's a lot of
subtlety.
Directions.
Yeah, and then the capes flow in the wind. And like it is pixel art, but it's a pixel art that is done in a very, I don't know,
modern,
modern, very high tech manner, right? To where you kind of just getting best of both worlds. Like it looks like a 3D model, but when you look at it, it's like, no, this is straight pixel art.
Yeah.
And you can even just leave your character in the middle of any environment anywhere in the game, and you'll see like shadows of clouds passing by, and everything just looks and feels beautiful all the time.
They blend really well.
Yeah. But without that oversaturated, what you mentioned, that ridiculous, like it just feels naturally beautiful instead of like crazy, saturated.
It's clear that a lot of love and effort went into this remake.
Very clear.
I think it looks fantastic personally. If you were a fan of the look of like, say, Xenogears or Grandia from the PlayStation 1, where the environments are 3D, but the characters are pixel
or like
sprites.
what was that? Second Story, Star Ocean?
Oh, Star Ocean.
Yeah, that kind of look.
Exactly.
It's like my favorite.
It's basically that, but like it just looks phenomenal and like modern, and the sprites blend really well with the backgrounds all the time. It's just really great. And the music, the way that this was iterative too. I noticed that.
Yeah.
So you have like the original music, the beeps and boops from the NES version.
Yeah.
And then you come into the Super Famicom and you could sort of start to hear it's an orchestration. I can tell those are plucked strings now, right? Like a plucked violin or a harp or something. So you started to hear, even all the way back from 1993, what essentially is the current version in the current game in terms of composition. They're very faithful to that.
That's cool.
So the composition you hear in the HD 2D remake is basically the same one from the Super Famicom version. It's just using modern sound fonts that sound almost indistinguishable from a recorded orchestra versus the sound fonts of the SNES era. And so they kind of iterated that on each, aside from Game Boy, which would have been a step back. It's a lot beeps and boops. Yeah. But no, I think the music is great. The visuals are great. The game retains the things that to me were really important. I think it does build interest in the original game, which I think is great for art preservation.
Yep.
I just wish the originals had been included in the package. I think if they had gone that extra step, I think it would have been really, really perfect as a package. So 100% recommend. And it's just an endlessly charming game to me. I have fallen head over heels in love with Dragon Quest 1. And I'm very much, like I said, I've played and have, Parker played Dragon Warrior 3. So like I know the games, but to get back into them in a really serious, deep diving kind of way, the way they have done with the first game, I'm really looking forward to that. And to just sort of like expanding my knowledge of the Dragon Quest series, generally speaking. I've played, like I said, Dragon Quest V, Dragon Quest 8, Dragon Quest 9, Dragon Quest 11. But Dragon Quest 1 was the game that turned me into a fan of Dragon Quest. And that, I think, really says something about the quality of a game that is almost 40 years old. So I'll just leave off with that. Play the game. It's great.
Yeah, I agree.